Welcome back to episode 2.
That's how the zombie apocalypse started. Now with a bang, but with a whisper. What I'm about to tell you may shock you to your core. Or maybe, probably most likely, you just think I'm batshit crazy. But if I can reach just a few of you out there, then I consider my job done. My job being to provide you with tools to save your lives in the months and years to come. But before we get into that, let me take you back to the start. This would be around the start of COVID, although I have no definite proof that these events are related. Back in mid-December 2019, when I was a mere taxpayer with an 8-to-5 job, I started noticing some weird stuff happening. One of my colleagues at the office started acting strange, seemingly from one day to the next. He began coming into the office very early, even though he always claimed not to be a morning person, and it was perpetually late before. When I confronted him, he ignored my question. As we'd never been friends, I dismissed it. Then one day, about a week later, I ran into him at the coffee corner where he was drinking milk. I could tell because our coffee cups were transparent. That was strange because at the office we only had those small condensed milk packages. I didn't want to be rude, so I didn't ask. The next day, the same thing. Day after that, again. And always at the exact same time. So the next day,
getting me
I went a bit earlier and just made myself look busy when he finally came into the kitchen.
I think I gotta ditch the helmet.
He took a cup, put it onto the coffee machine.
I don't know what
he then pressed on the capsule he wanted. The whole row had been empty for more than a week. When nothing came, he pressed the button to make coffee, but only hot water poured. Naturally, as there was no capsule. He then proceeded to open 2 packages of condensed milk and pour them into the hot water. The whole time this was happening, I couldn't help but stare. Yet, he didn't seem to notice me. He just drank his hot water and milk and went on about his day. It was so strange. Yet, I really didn't know what to make of it. The next day, the row of coffee capsules had been filled, and he went back to drinking coffee. Beginning of the years are busy for us, so I didn't have time to follow him around properly. But sure enough, the very strictly timed routine continued as far as I could tell. That was the first instance I noticed something wasn't right in the world. And because it was such an isolated case, it didn't even cross my mind that it would mean something bigger was lingering in the shadows. Then, COVID started. It was insane. Lockdown, working from home. I had very little social interaction. Then, finally, we were allowed to go to grocery shopping. And there I noticed more weirdness. It was small. So small that if I hadn't had the experience of my colleague, I might have missed it. Remember how in COVID, there were certain supermarket aisles that were just completely empty? Think toilet paper, cans, flour, etc. Well, I noticed some people coming up the flour aisle, for example, staring at it for 30 seconds and then leaving. I noticed the same people doing the same thing every day at the same time. Then, when the flour was resupplied, they'd grab a bag. Every day, a bag of flour, or a can of tomato soup, or a pack of 8 rolls of toilet paper. Every day, 8 rolls of toilet paper. What a shitty household, right? So I decided to follow these people. There weren't many, maybe 1 or 2 in each supermarket, and some, none. I just started going into various supermarkets and noting behaviors down. I named my subjects. I had Flower Power, Crap Rap Fella, Soupy McSoupface, and so on. I was so intrigued by Crap Rap, so I followed him first. This was around May, but I was still working from home. So I followed Crap Rap home the first night, and in the early next morning, I packed my work laptop and camped his building, intent on following him around the whole day. He came out around 7:15, dressed in a gray suit, and went to the bus stop.
So I have the flu.
He got a number 12, and he got off 4 stops later at an office building. I couldn't follow him there, so I proceeded to work from the coffee place across the street. Crap Rap got out at 5:15, went to the bus stop, took number 12 in the other direction, and went home. At 7:20 in the evening, Crap Rap got out of his house again, this time dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and went to the supermarket where I first met him. He did his grocery shopping every day the same, including 8 rolls of toilet paper, and went home. At first glance, this was so ordinary, so normal, that I was the crazy one, borderline stalking at this point. But those 8 rolls, I just couldn't understand. then the standing and the staring at the aisle, and my colleague with his hot water and milk. So I went back the next day, and sure enough, Crap Rap did the same thing at the same time. The only thing that was different was his clothing. Work 7:15 to 5:15. Grocery shopping at 7:20. Always with an 8 roll. I followed him for a whole week. On Saturday, he wouldn't leave the house until 7:20 to go grocery shopping. On Sunday, he wouldn't leave at all. I then followed Flower Power. She also had a strict routine, albeit different from Crap Rap's. She'd leave the house at 5:30, and she'd work in a bakery. She'd come at 3 and go grocery shopping at exactly 6:25 p.m. Soupy seemed to be a nightclub bouncer, so he'd do his grocery shopping at lunchtime, and he'd work nights. 1 p.m. for food, always with that 1 can of tomato soup, working 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. None of these people drove cars. None of them were seen in the company of others apart from at work, and none of these people went anywhere else. My colleague, whom I'd named Coffeeson, had a routine of his own. It could be that I stumbled upon a few very sad people, with not much going on for them, or it could be that there was a pattern. So I went online. At first search, on regular sites, news outlets, and the normal part of Reddit, I found nothing. Then I dug deeper. More obscure places. Conspiracy theory subreddits, and the sort. Sure enough, not long after, I stumbled upon similar anecdotes. I lurked around those websites and subreddits for a few weeks as they got more and more visibility. First, there were maybe a dozen people describing such happenings. Then, by the end of 2020, there were thousands of accounts. Not enough to become mainstream, but enough to catch the attention of mods and supervisors. The accounts started getting banned, and the posts or articles were removed. Beginning in 2021, there was little evidence left that anything was happening. Sure enough, on my end, Crap Rap. Where was he storing all that paper? Soupy & Co. was going strong, and I'd added a good 20 or so more of these people to my list. It was getting difficult to survey them all. I decided to take action and talk to someone. I looked on Reddit for one of those accounts that I'd observed before, but, not unexpectedly, I couldn't find them anymore. Then one day, on an obscure subreddit, someone posted something about it. The user said that the post would be removed within 15 minutes, but that if he had any sort of encounters with what they were calling robot people, to contact them right away. So I did.
Robot.
The user responded instantly, giving me another username. I was vetted for about an hour, and then was directed to another user. This one asked me to describe my encounters with the robot people, and then I was directed to another user. I felt like I had called IT support was being jerked around. Finally, about 5 hours in, I was giving nothing but the web address to a forum. There, I could find again the thousands of accounts removed from mainstream internet in the months prior. Since I promised myself I wouldn't be the quiet observer anymore, I started interacting with the forums. Soon enough, I was contacted by someone from the area. They had guessed my location based on Crap Rap, where they observed their local supermarket. They seemed to be a community that believed in the existence of the robot people, and I was invited to meet them in person. At first, I was very reluctant. For me, when I was reading the forums and what I'd experienced myself, it became a little too much. So I ignored the invite and distanced myself for a while. I have to add that this was happening towards the end of 2021. Then, in 2022, a series of aggressions around the world started. As I was watching the evening news, one night in March, I noticed something off. It was one of those World Peace Summits where, behind the spokesperson, there was a fellow who was acting ever so strangely. He would just take his phone out of his pocket precisely every 4 minutes and 23 seconds and look at it for a second, and put it back in his pocket. He did this for the whole duration of the speech, which lasted well over an hour. As the camera was filming the speaker, also the other world leaders' reactions and questions, at one moment, it hovered over the guy's phone as he was taking out of his pocket. The phone was not on. There was nothing on the screen. It was completely dark, like it was out of battery or something. So what the hell was he checking every 4 minutes and 23 seconds? Again, was there any isolated event? Again, was this an isolated event? I wouldn't think twice about it. With everything else combined, I was half sold on the robot people, and now I was convinced that infiltrating governments, so I went back to my forum and wrote to the community. They replied to me within an hour, and organized an emergency meeting for me that very evening. I attended. It was very informal. We met at a coffee shop in the center. Starbucks, but one of those cozy little shops that are open late into the evenings. Serve nothing but coffee, soft drinks, and muffins. There were 6 people who came to meet me, but I was informed that there were many more out there in our city. The leader, or at least the delegated speaker, was called John. They wanted to know my experiences with dates and locations. When I told them about Coffeeston, they all seemed surprised. I seemed to be one of the very first observers. Most people did not notice anything strange until well into 2020. They were very cryptic and did not give much information. I think I was once again being vetted, and I must have passed their test when they gave me the address to their headquarters and told me to come to the next day. The headquarters was a small warehouse just outside the city. I quickly learned to belong to Sam, one of the people I had met the night before. He was a small supermarket owner, the one in which Flower Power shopped. He was also one of the first to notice the strange behavior within the community, and from what I could gather, he was one of the founders. There was nothing much going on at the headquarters. In 2022, they were still quite static in the sense that they would meet, discuss what they'd observe, agree on who to follow next, etc. When I told them what I had seen on the TV the other night, they seemed shocked, which I had not expected. It seemed that, once again, I was the first to observe this, which meant it might have not have been a common occurrence, or at least that's what we thought at the time. As violence increased throughout Europe and the Middle East, robot people could be spotted easier and easier, more and more frequently. I was not going to daily or even weekly meetings within the community, but I was keeping tabs on them and giving them information whenever I had it.
Okay.
One day, Sam texted me saying that I should stop by the headquarters as soon as I manage. It was early 2023, and I hadn't been there in about 3 months. I stopped by after work. It was busier than usual, but I bumped into John on the way
It's
from the
up to
parking
you
lot.
if you want.
He
The
told me that
chicken
they made
Alfredo's
progress.
already
I
thawed.
wasn't sure what that meant.
There's chicken
I
and
never made
there's,
any moves, so I was
there's
hoping to make any
chicken, there's
progress.
broccoli, and
I thought.
Alfredo sauce.
It all became clear as we stepped inside the main hallway. Instead of the usual warehouse setup, it was now transformed into some sort of studio apartment, which was surrounded by what seemed to be plexiglass.
It's all
A
up to you.
sophisticated, transparent cage. Inside, to my horror, no other than Coffeeston. I remember at the time, I freaked out.
It's a nice place.
Full-on meltdown. They sedated me. I guess part of me never wanted to accept that something was actually happening. For the longest time. And when I saw Coffeeston, my biggest fear came true. The one where I had become a part of a cult. A group of people with misplaced belief system
Your apple dig is
who are now
doctorate,
kidnapping
right?
innocents. When I woke up from my sedation, I was alone in a room with Sam. He explained to me that they reprogrammed Coffeeston to believe that it's always Sunday, and for this reason, he never leaves his apartment. They did so by changing his phone date, which they would always reset every morning. They reconstructed the apartment here. Coffeeston had no idea he was being watched. He would just wake up, check his phone, and then sit on the bed. The whole day as if he was waiting for something. He would not eat or drink,
Perfect.
nor would use
golden
the bathroom.
apple.
He'd just sit. And when night came, he would lie down. They showed me, and I could not believe my eyes. This was Coffeeston's 8th Sunday in a row. He hadn't eaten or drank in 8 days, and yet he looked perfectly fine. I wonder if that's what the rest of them do when they're on a Sunday, or even every time they're alone in their apartments or houses. Sam and John confirmed to me that it was. I asked what was next, and they told me they were trying to see whether they could find a doctor to do tests on Coffeeston. This made me feel uncomfortable again. Sam then explained to me that he couldn't let me leave until the shock wore off, as they couldn't risk me alerting authorities. My reaction was bad, apparently. Unfortunately for me, they knew my living situation fine. Well, they knew I had no one waiting for me, not even a cat or a dog. They made me ask for days off from work, and I complied. I was scared. Scared of these people, but also scared of Coffeeston, and what this meant for the world. A few days later, after several talks, I wholeheartedly agreed that it was for the greater good that they test Coffeeston. There were several similar developments in other parts of the world, so I managed to find a doctor. Maria had seen a couple of other similar patients. She confirmed that Coffeeston was no different. Coffeeston was not alive. He did not have a heartbeat or brain function. It was like he was in a coma, but seemed to be able to perform predetermined mechanical tasks. Maria used the word zombie, Coffeeson was, for all intents and purposes, a non-aggressive zombie. That was the first time it occurred to me, to us, that the zombie apocalypse had begun. And then Maria ran some more tests and left to see another community. We kept in touch with people from all over the world at a greater scale since then. One day, this was maybe in the middle of summer, we received a message from our friends in Pakistan reporting small, isolated incidents that they could not explain. One of the zombies that we're tracking went full-on aggressive and started killing people on the streets, after which he was just exploded. The news did not pick it up. Similar reports came from Afghanistan, Uganda, and even Ukraine. Nothing was reported. We received some video footage from surveillance cameras.
Oh, getting better.
In one of them, you can see a tall man walking up to a zombie in a mall, whispering something in his ear, and then turning around and walking out. Well, guys don't look at explosions, I guess. What followed immediately after was a massacre, with no survivors. Last week, Sam was attacked. It happened in his own supermarket. Someone activated flower power. 8 people died. 12 were injured. He's still in the hospital. We thought our small city would not be at risk. Not so soon, at least. We are not sure what to do next. We live in constant fear that one of these creatures can be active at any point in time and unleash hell on Earth. We are also struggling with different opinions from within our group. Some believe this is the end of the world in a biblical sense, and that we should just let it play out. Others want to contact authorities. Others have no trust in the government and want to make matters into their own hands. We are on the brink of disaster, and again, I find myself to be a mere observer. And in the meantime, these zombies remain a ticking time bomb. So if you happen to see any robot-like behavior, take note of it. Stay out of their path. That's right. Almost every single zombie movie was wrong. Kind of strange, seeing as there are so many films related to the genre, right? 28 Weeks Later, The Walking Dead, not a movie I know. The Cured, Zombieland, World War Z. Don't even get me started on World War Z. And I Am Legend. You get the picture. All wrong. I mean, the infected were as ferocious as those of World War Z or 28 Weeks Later, and sometimes as numerous, but grouped up as The Walking Dead. Yes, in many sad and sorrowful cases, they did chew lots of people to bits. And then, still hungry, cross entire continents and incomprehensible large hordes like in Z Nation to feed on more innocent souls in greener pastures. But no, the so-called zombie apocalypse was boring. Just mind-numbingly tedious, dull, and quite literally dead boring. Most of the time. In fact, the infected became more of a nuisance than a world-ending threat. Why, you may ask? Well, the answer is more obvious than you think. Ask yourself, what have humans been doing for millennia? And what will they always continue to do until they finally do actually meet their miserable end? Kill each other. Yes, we have no qualms about dropping nuclear bombs which could incinerate hundreds of thousands of people in an instant on each other in Japan. What makes you think a person who is infected with a disease that can make them brutally savage a whole room of people, tearing them into crimson-soaked shreds of flesh, which makes a sad, squelchy sound as they hit the cold, gray floor, not die as quickly as someone who doesn't have an innate drive for human flesh and infecting others? In fact, we, as a race, were too good at killing the infected. So good, it was scary. More scary than the infected themselves. When they began to emerge into large groups that could breach a city's defenses, they could be Moabbed into the next world, which they should have passed already. Got a group of flesh-hungry freaks chasing after you? Nothing a few rounds from a general-purpose machine gun couldn't fix. Have a 250-pound bloodthirsty man-beast slamming its pulverized fist on the door of your quiet suburban home? Nothing a 9mm pistol couldn't solve. Heat-seeking missiles, miniguns, Kalashnikovs, rocket-propelled grenades, hand-tossed grenades, Apache gunships, if you were lucky. Seaborne guns, even handheld weapons to a certain range, were all of use. But many across the world, when the infected came, it was just business as usual. Instead of shooting at whoever was shooting back at you, you now joined them in shooting mouth-foaming, bloodshot-eyed monsters dressed in ripped jeans. It was like a turkey shoot. Hell, the infected even promoted regional peace in some places. Israel joined Palestine together to cut down anything that dared enter the Sinai Peninsula. In Mexico, rival cartels and gangs joined together to protect the local population, at least the ones who could pay enough, from a marauding monstrosity. Even India and Pakistan set to fight together Until a small boarding issue escalated into a nuclear holocaust, the world has never seen the likes of before. The exact location of patient zero is unknown. What we do now know, however, is that the infection started to pick up pace in Zambia, being given the name Zambian rabies. Then later the nickname of the Nile flu, due to its transmission down the world's longest river. After a few weeks, it was established that a local effort to curb the spread of the virus had successfully contained it to Africa. The vast majority of cases were in sub-Saharan Africa, where the ability to fight back was poor, and a few cases had sprung up on the periphery of North Africa. Despite the successful containment, it was not enough to stop the impending collapse. People did something else that they have done for millennia when they are faced with civilizational threats. They freaked. Here in Britain, the fear-fueled masses hit the supermarkets hard. They plundered the canned food and non-perishable aisles, and then ate through what was left of the perishable goods in a matter of hours. Financial institutions collapsed within the day, and the government collapsed within the week. So much for strong and stable. Martial law ensued. People got hungry, stayed indoors for days, not daring to venture outside of the chaotic new world which had been bequeathed upon them by fear. Soon they began to starve. Those with food had it taken from them by those with more firepower. Then those with firepower were slowly dealt with by those who had even more firepower, namely the army. People were rumored to have begun eating each other long before the infected showed up. Lord Henry Kitchener's new military government actions in those early days were the only thing that managed to keep some semblance of order. After the mass freakout was when the boredom began. 20% of the population had died from starvation, lack of water, or in the maelstrom of violence which followed the news of the outbreak. For me personally, it wasn't that different. For the first few hours a day, the electricity comes back on. I sit in my room watching YouTube or posting to Reddit. However, when the electricity goes out between 9 p.m. and 12 p.m. the next day, I sometimes wish I was fighting the infected. At least that would be somewhat entertaining. Life is somewhat normal now. You can go to the shop and exchange your ration token for some bread, vegetables, and meat. A bit like how my grandfather described the jolly old days of the Blitz. At least they had a fighting spirit back then. You could take a stroll down the street passing a heavily armored vehicle or two. Their occupants engaged in a game of cards, rifles slung lazily on their backs. Perhaps you are entertained by more worldly pleasures. You can engage in many forms of illicit activity which would not be fulfilled before. There were no luxury summer holidays abroad. The only aircraft flying overhead were being military in nature. No more trips to the movies. No more McDonald's drive-thru, TV, and certainly no more drunken nights to the local nightclub. Just boredom. The infection has spread into mainland Europe now, but it is mainly under control. Most places are holding up fine, only threatened at night when visibility is low, and infected that have been hiding during the day come out to ravage local populations. We in Britain are experiencing a sort of phony war again, just sitting and waiting for the infection to reach our shores, if we don't all die from boredom first. I am a zombie, and it's not so bad. I'm learning to live with it. I'm sorry I can't properly introduce myself, but I don't have a name anymore. Hardly any of us do. We forget them, like anniversaries and PIN numbers. I think mine might have started with a T, but I'm not sure. It's funny, because back when I was alive, I was forgetting other people's names. I'm finding the irony abounds in the zombie life. An ever-present punchline. It's hard to smile when your lips have rotted off. Before I became a zombie, I think I was a businessman or young professional of some kind. I think I worked in one of those stifling office jobs in a high-rise somewhere. The clothes clinging to the remains of my body are high-quality business casual. Fine garbadine slacks, silvery silk shirt, red Armani power tie. I would probably look pretty sharp if my intestines weren't dragging at my feet. We like to joke and speculate about our remaining outfits, since these final fashion choices are usually the only indication of who we were before we became no one. Some people's are less obvious than mine. Jeans and a white t-shirt, skirt and a tank top. So we make random guesses. You were a plumber. You were a barista. Ring any bells? It usually doesn't. No one I know has any specific memories.
Crazy.
We recognize some things, buildings, cars, Armani ties, but context eludes us. We hear, we do what we do. We lack excellent diction, but we do communicate. We grunt and groan. We make hand gestures, and sometimes a few words slip out. It's not that different from before. There are a few hundred of us living in a wide plain of dust outside some large city. We don't need shelter or warmth, obviously. We stand around in the dust, and time passes. I think we've been here a long time. Despite my dragging entrails, I am in decay's early stages. But there are a few elderly ones here who are little more than skeletons with clean bits of muscle. Somehow, it still extends and contracts, and they keep moving. I've never seen any of us die of old age. Maybe we'll live forever. I don't know. I don't think much about the future anymore. That's something that's very different from before. When I was alive, the future was all I thought about, obsessed about. Death has relaxed me. But it makes me sad that we've forgotten our names. Out of everything, this seems to be the most tragic. I don't miss my own, but I mourn for everyone else's, because I want to love them, but I don't know who they are. Today a group of us are going into town to find some food. How this expedition begins is one of us gets hungry and starts shuffling towards town, and a few others following. Focused thought is a rare occurrence with us, and we follow when we see it. Otherwise, we would just be standing around and groaning. We do a lot of standing and groaning, and it's frustrating sometimes. Years pass this way. Flesh withers on our bones, and we stand around, waiting for it. I am curious how old I might be. The city where the people live is not that far. We arrive around noon and start looking for living flesh. The new kind of hunger is a strange feeling. You don't feel it in your stomach. Of course not, since some of us don't have stomachs. You feel it just everywhere. You start to feel more dead. I've watched some of my friends go back to being full dead when food is scarce. They just slow down and stop, and become corpses again. I don't really understand it. I guess the world is mostly ended, because the cities we wandered through are decaying as fast as we are. Buildings are collapsed. Dead, rusted cars fill the streets. All glass everywhere is shattered. I don't know if it was a war or a plague, or if it was just us. Maybe it was all three. I don't know. I don't think about things like that anymore. In a cluster of broken down apartment buildings, we find some people, and we eat them. Some of them have weapons, and as usual, we lose some of our number. But we don't care. Why would we care? What's death now? Eating is not a pleasant business. I chew off a man's arm, and I hate this. It's disgusting. I hate his screams, because I don't like pain. I don't like to hurt things. But this is the world now. This is what we do. Of course, if I don't eat all of him, if I leave just enough, he'll rise up and follow me back to our dusty field outside the city, and that might make me feel better. I'll introduce him to everyone, and maybe we'll stand around and groan for a while. It's hard to say what friends are anymore,
weird.
but maybe that's close. If I don't eat all of him, if I leave enough. But of course, I don't leave enough. I eat his brain, because it's the good part. That's the part that, when I swallow it, makes my head light up with feelings. Clear memories. For about 3 to 10 seconds, depending on the person. I get to feel alive. I get traces of delicious meals, beautiful music, perfume, orgasms, sunsets, life. Then it fades, and I get up and stumble out of the city. Still dead, but feeling a little less, feeling okay. I don't know why we have to eat people. I don't understand what chewing off a man's neck accomplishes. We certainly don't digest the meat and absorb the nutrients. My stomach is a rotted bag of dried bile. Useless. We don't digest. We just eat until the weight forces it out of our assholes. And then we eat more. It feels so useless. And yet, it keeps us walking. I don't know why. None of us really understand why we are here. We don't know if we're the result of some strange global infection, or some ancient curse, or something even more senseless. We don't talk about it much. Existential debate is not a major part of zombie life. We are here, and we do things. We are simple. It's nice sometimes. Outside the city again, back with the others in the dust field, I start walking in a circle for no reason. I plant one foot in the dirt and pivot on it, around and around, kicking up clouds of dust. Before, when I was alive, I could never have done this. I remember stress. I remember bills and deadlines, asset retention reports. I remember being so occupied, so always everywhere all the time occupied. Now I'm just standing in a wide open field of dust, walking in a circle. The world has been distilled. Being dead is easy. After a few days of this, I stop walking and I stand still, swaying back and forth, groaning a little. I don't know why I groan. I'm not in pain, and I'm not sad. I think it's just air being squeezed in and out of my lungs. When my lungs decompose, it will probably stop. And now, while swaying and groaning, I notice a dead woman standing a few feet away from me, facing the distant mountains. She doesn't sway or groan. Her head just lolls from side to side. I like that about her, that she doesn't sway or groan. I walk over and stand beside her.
I like that about
I
her.
wave some kind of greeting, and she responds with a lurch of her shoulder. I like her. I reach out and touch her hair. She has not been dead very long. Her skin is gray and her eyes slightly sunken. She has no exposed bones or organs.
God.
Her death outfit is a black skirt and a snug white button-up. I suspect she used to be a waitress. Pinned to her chest is a silver name tag. I can read her name. She has a name. Her name is Emily. I point to her chest. Slowly, with great effort, I say, Emily!
Emily!
The word rolls off what's left of my tongue like honey. What a good name. I feel warm saying it.
Emily.
Emily's cloudy eyes widen at the sounds, and she smiles. I also smile. And then maybe I'm a little nervous, because my tibia snaps, and I fall backwards into the dust.
Oh yeah.
Emily just laughs, and it's a choked, raw, lovely sound. She reaches down and helps me to my feet. Emily and I have fallen in love.
I have you.
I'm not sure how this happens. I remember what love was like before, and this is different. This is
Hopefully
simpler.
my food don't disappear
Before,
when I do this.
there were complex and emotional and biological factors at work. We had long checklists and elaborate tests we passed. We looked at hairstyles and careers and breast sizes. And sex was there, and everything, confusing everyone, like hunger. It created longing. It created ambition, competition. It drove people to leave their houses and invent automobiles, spacecraft, and atom bombs, when they could instead just sit on the couch until they died. Animal cravings, subconscious urges. Sex made the world go round.
That's
This is all gone now. Sex, once a force of universal gravity, is now irrelevant. Ambition and longing have left the equation.
No judgment.
My penis fell off 2 weeks ago,
My penis fell off.
so the equation is deleted. The blackboard erased. And things are different now. Our actions have no ulterior motives. We shuffle around in the dust and occasionally have lumbering, grunting exchanges with our peers. No one argues. There are no fights. Ever. And Emily is not a complicated process. I just see her and walk over to her, and for no reason, really, I decide I want to be with her for a long time. So now we shuffle around in the
That's
dust
normal
together instead of
relationship,
alone.
right?
For whatever reason, we enjoy each other's company. We have to go into town to eat people. We do it at separate times, because it's unpleasant, and we don't want to share that. We share everything else, and it's nice. We decided to walk to the mountains. It takes us 3 days, but now we are standing on a cliff, looking up at a fat white moon. At our backs, the night sky is red from distant cities burning. But we don't care about that. I clumsily grab Emily's hand, and we stare at the moon. There's no real reason for any of this. But like I said, the world has been distilled. Love has been distilled.
Playing a game that's got birds in it.
Everything is easy now. Yesterday my leg broke
Are you
off,
kidding me?
and I don't even mind.
Alright.
Domino's pepperoni
Yeah, no,
stuffed
that's
cheesy
the
bread
game.
is loaded with pepperoni.
It's not daytime out if that's what you're thinking.
My best friend
It's a beautiful
caught that
morning.
bullshit zombie virus.
In the game.
I think I helped her spread it across the state. Tammy and I had been joking about the virus for a week. We live in a small town and our journalists get bored. They interview anyone they can. So when a woman ate some dude's heart out and another woman cut her boyfriend's finger off, the The news was all over it. It was clear from the beginning they didn't have many answers. No autopsy reports were released to the public. No explanation as to why the events had happened. No explanation, that is, except for the shit our town's tiny members came up with. I swear to God this sounds just like zombie virus that I worked with back in the 60s, old Miss Fritz cried out in the microphone. I don't know how, and I don't know the local news team tracked her down, but they did. Miss Fritz is always going on about the shit she did in the 60s. Working with a zombie virus is nothing new. A tan Toyota Camry blew past us, very clearly running the red light and nearly plowing the side of several cars. I rolled my eyes from the passenger seat, stretched my arms out.
Another
I
one.
waved them up and down stiffly, turning my head towards Tammy.
Oh
no, it must be the zombie virus, I growled. Tammy whooped with laughter and slammed her palms against the steering wheel as we, legally, went through the light. Alright, but on a serious note, non-batshit crazy note, we're supposed to turn in about a mile to drop those groceries off. I was Tammy's faithful navigator. I went with her on most food deliveries she picked up, unless I was out doing my own. She claimed I kept her from getting lost and getting kidnapped. Whatever positive thing she thought worked for me. I was hopelessly in love with my best friend. Left or right? Tammy's voice cracked a bit, and I could tell she was about to spiral into panic mode. She didn't do well driving, or navigating, or talking to strangers. All things required to work for Hub Grub.
Having sex or anything.
It's going to be on the left, and it's going to be okay. Okay? I soothed. I reached a hand over the space between us, squeezing her arm gently before pulling away. We will get in, get out. I'll even help you talk to the lady and drop the food off, okay? She nodded. Her face was more tense than when we started this trip, and her knuckles were stark white. But she put her turn signal on and turned where we should. I tried to smile at her, help her as much as I could. I'll drive after this. You still raking the tips, but you don't have to drive anymore. I got you. I promise. She relaxed visibly. I knew she was stressed out because this was the first grocery shopping assignment we'd received from Hub Grub. Apparently, they had teamed up with the local supermarkets to help families get fast food and groceries to their front steps without having to lift more than a finger. I directed her to the lady's house, Bandy W, and told her when to park. Down past Bandy's house, we could see that some kind of craziness was going down. A car was wrapped around a tree, and people were running around the front yard like lunatics. I could have sworn the car wrapped around the tree was none other than that tan Camry that had blown past us. And tried to joke with Tammy about the virus again. Can we just get this done? She ignored my joke. I could see the stress in her face. I worried we were headed straight to Panic Town again. Pop the trunk. Get the groceries. I'll talk to Bandy, I said. Tammy hadn't released her grip on the wheel by the time I reached Bandy's front door, but I figured I could talk long enough to give her some time. I knew she needed it. I tapped on the glass screen door, peeking inside just a little bit. There were oodles of toddlers traipsing around this lady's foyer. And I mean oodles. I counted at least 9 crotch goblins wobbling around. They were drooling over various soft toys and staring at me with an intensity I didn't like one bit. That was one pro to being a child-free lesbian, I thought. There's even less of a chance I'll end up with this many soul-sucking crawlers around.
Lesbian.
The baby's attention refocused to something else in the house, and I figured Mama Bandy was on the way. I plastered a smile on my face and glanced behind me quickly. Tammy was finally shakily climbing out of the car and getting the groceries from the back. Bandy came to the door a second later, looking every bit like the mother of 9 children. I didn't even blame her for ordering groceries online. How do you pack that many heathens in the van and go? How do you even leave, actually? Hi, ma'am. Bandy? I said as she popped open the glass door. Several of the drooling monsters rose from the floor and tumbled towards the sunshine. Yes, she confirmed. I held up Tammy's smartphone, telling her it was our first time delivering groceries, but we knew she needed to sign the dotted line. While she did so, a particularly odd-looking rugrat stepped onto the porch with her mom. He was drooling hard, and his eyes were glazed, unfocused. He looked like he might have had a fever of some sort. I'll go help bring the rest in, I told Bandy. barely escaping the reaching, sickly grasp of wobbly toddlers as I bounded up the front stoop and headed toward the car. Tammy struggled with the amount of groceries she had on her own arms. I watched as she walked a little cockeyed to the front door, grinning at Bandy in that nervous way she grins at all strangers. Bandy started taking bags from Tammy, and as I grabbed the remaining groceries and slammed the trunk, I watched as a sickly toddler grabbed hold of Tammy's bare leg. Tammy wasn't nearly the dick I was when it came to kids. She peered down at the young'un with genuine, sparkling attention. She even bent down a little to talk to the boy, once Bandy had removed enough of the grocery load. Just as I came up behind Tammy with the last of the bags, the boy looked up into Tammy's looming face and sneezed. I recoiled automatically, accidentally letting slip a gross. Bandy sent me a scathing look, and I worried for Tammy's review. Tammy, ever the professional, albeit nervous as fuck, individual as she was, simply laughed and wiped a hand across her face. I loved her laugh. Even the super fake, baby just sneezed in my eye laugh. Bandy relaxed a little and took the groceries from my hands. Her and Tammy exchanged pleasantries for a minute as I went back to the car, waiting for the driver's side door. Tammy seemed to be genuinely enjoying interacting with the customer for once. The little boy still had his little boy talon dug into her calf, but she really didn't seem to mind. Finally, Tammy and Bandy stopped talking. Tammy walked back towards the car with a distracted look on her face. She paused in front of me, looking confused. "Ready to go?" I asked. Tammy was so close to me, I could smell the perfume she used daily. DayZ something or other. My heart skipped a beat. "I'll drive," Tammy said. She almost didn't sound like herself. I thought I was going to drive. "Help you out?" I asked. Instead of responding, Tammy simply shoved past me and hopped in the driver's seat, nipping my heels at the door when she popped it open. "Hey," I protested. I figured the stress must just have overwhelmed her, so I ran the passenger side and got in, not saying much else. Her smartphone dinged in my hand, signaling to us that now that we had dropped the delivery off, we were ready for our next one. Now we're gonna go pick up a $40 pizza order for some dude named Joe. Head up to Max. You know the way, I instructed Tammy gently. She again didn't respond. Instead, she peeled out of the driveway like a fucking lunatic. "What the fuck?" I shouted. The oh shit handle just in case. Tammy wasn't the best driver. She surely never treated the road or someone's driveway like the NASCAR track. I watched as Tammy's face paled. Her mouth twisted up in a gruesome grin, completely unlike any face I'd ever seen her make. She wrenched the volume knob to way above any limit she'd usually let her sound system go. I was floored as she, floored it. I looked behind us and saw the Toyota smoking around the tree. Mandy didn't seem bothered by Tammy's actions. I didn't see a single other neighbor on the street to complain. Tammy ignored every direction I gave her. She ignored every question I had. Ignored every expletive I screeched when she took the millionth turn to sharp. Ignored the crossing pedestrians and ran lights. It was almost like Tammy wasn't there at all. I considered calling someone. Maybe she was suffering a total break from the reality. I realized, though, that I could rather die in a fiery car crash than betray the trust of my friend. Eventually, I just let her drive. I didn't interrupt, didn't squeak in fear, didn't even close my eyes. I watched her as openly as I watched the road. She was never once asked me in her adorable, nervous way, what the fuck was I staring at? I should have been shocked when she pulled up to the airport. It was a holiday weekend. Cars were everywhere, people honking and screaming from their windows. I should have been surprised because the airport was the last place Tammy would have been caught dead, no matter the money or the cause. But Tammy wasn't acting like Tammy. She roared into a spot reserved for Ubers and hopped out, leaving her keys in the ignition. I scrambled to turn the car off, grabbed her phone, and locked the doors before I lost her in the crowd. We already had several people squalling at us for taking up a reserved spot. I threw out my most charming, apologetic smile and ducked after Tammy. She was pushing her way through the crowd. People seemed to be mainly trying to get into the airport, not leave it. And there was a clusterfuck at the doors. Tammy was shoulder-checking people and forcing her tiny body through the masses. I followed as politely as I could, with as little shoving as I could get away with, my face burning the fuck up with embarrassment. Tammy stopped when she reached the center of the airport. The center. There were hundreds of people racing to get to the elevators, escalators, ticket counters, and their terminals. By the time I reached her in the throng of people, I had witnessed her be nearly trampled several times. I gripped Shammy's shoulder and spun her towards me. I was out of breath and sweating. Fuck, was there a lot of people here? What the fuck are you doing? I gasped. It was then I saw her eyes. Tammy was completely gone. There was nothing human left in her tiny glance she passed over my face. I searched her for a sign of illness. Sweating, drooling, clammy skin, anything to explain why the fuck she was acting the way she was. I saw nothing. Tammy, or the shell of Tammy, or whatever the fuck that was, wrenched away from my grasp and walked deeper into the crowd of people. I lost sight of her for a moment, maybe two. A wispy cloud of red thickened quickly by streams of gore exploded into the air, followed by the screams of too many people to imagine. I started elbowing my way through the crowd. A feeling in my gut told me the wave of intestines that had popped into the air of unsuspecting travelers belonged to the love of my life. A feeling I desperately wanted to ignore. The scream of passengers became overwhelming as I delved into the crowd. I didn't even have to really shove people out of the way for very long. The people were parting like the Red Sea. A circle of people with their phones out, recording, remained around the source of blood and guts. I pushed past a particularly paunchy woman with a brick for a phone, snapping grainy pictures and mumbling nonsense endlessly. A glance at her fuzzy screen confirmed my horrible feelings. The screen showed a flowered red dress in shreds, filled with gore and blood. Tammy had been wearing her favorite red sundress. I wish I hadn't looked past the woman's cell phone. I wish I could forget what I saw. I wish I knew exactly what it meant. Tammy, well, remained of her anyway, lay at my feet. Veins had fired out in jagged patterns against the floor and the feet of the people recording. Tendons had exploded against the white tile, turning the airport floor a murky brown/red. Strings of long blonde hair, dyed a dingy copper by blood, had flown into every crevice possible. I watched as a sobering child clinging to her mother's leg pulled Tammy's hair from between her toes and clumps. As I screamed over the lumpy remains of my best friend, I couldn't help but think back on Miss Fritz's interview with the local news channel. They attack populated areas, then they spread it. Sometimes they explode.
Explode. That's a little creepy. Think about it.
June 17th. They call them the Risen now. A fitting name, I suppose. For those who should stay in their graves. But once, they were us. Friends, family, strangers. Now there is something else entirely. I write this as both a testament to my survival and a plea for understanding for the world I knew was gone, replaced by a relentless nightmare.
All these open like
June
that.
23rd.
Nervous.
It all began with whispers, the murmurs of a strange illness sweeping through our town. People brushed it off, as we always do when confronted with something we can't comprehend. But then the whispers grew louder, and the infected began to emerge from their homes, their eyes vacant, their skin pallid. They hungered for the living. June 30th. The outbreak escalated quickly, consuming our town in a relentless tide of death. I watched as neighbors turned on neighbors, the infected tearing into their flesh. Panic spread faster than the virus, and soon, there was no refuge left. I had to make an agonizing choice. Protect my family, or myself. July 10th. The streets are now a wasteland of shattered glass and abandoned cars. The groans of the Risen echo through the night, a chorus of despair that never seems to fade. I've learned to move silently, to avoid attracting their attention. I scavenge for supplies, always on the lookout for other survivors who might pose a threat. July 18th. Loneliness has become my constant companion. The sound of my own voice feels foreign, a harsh reminder of the life I once knew. I wonder if I'm the last living soul in this forsaken world. The infected are relentless, and their numbers seem to grow with each passing day. July 25th. I've taken refuge in an abandoned building, fortifying as best I can. The nights are the worst. The distant moans of the Risen, and and the scratching of the doors and windows. Sleep is a fleeting luxury, for every sound, every shadow, sends my heart pounding with dread. August 2nd. This journal is my only companion now, a lifeline to sanity in a world gone mad. I've seen things that would haunt the bravest of souls, families torn apart, humanity stripped away from their infected, and the relentless march of the risen. It's a world where the line between life and death is blurred into an endless nightmare. August 10th. My supplies are dwindling, and hope, like a fading ember, grows dimmer with each passing day. I don't know if anyone else will read these words, if there are any others out there, hiding in the shadows, clinging to the last vestiges of humanity, but I write them anyway, a testament to my existence, a record of the horrors I've witnessed. August 20th. As I prepare to face another night filled with dread and uncertainty, I hold on to the fragile hope that somewhere, somehow, there is a sliver of salvation, a chance to escape this relentless nightmare and find a glimmer of humanity in the darkness. The risen are relentless, but so is my will to survive. The zombie apocalypse comes every night in Sun Creek, Colorado. I've been working the night shift at the Sun Creek graveyard for 6 years now, and boy, have I seen some weird shit. My name is Andrew J., but most people call me AJ, to simplify it. I've lived in Sun Creek, Colorado for my whole life. Worked in the graveyard for 14 years, and slowly started working the night shift in 2013. Before I started working the night shift, Sun Creek seemed like a strange place, and the unspoken rule that came with living there. Don't be outside after 10 p.m. Close your windows between 5 and 6 p.m. If something in your house goes missing, report to the police department immediately. The strange rumors about otherworldly beings. Now, these seem like fairly normal, albeit random, rules of the neighborhood, which have had many logical explanations. Then I began working the night shift. Before I start telling you my job, I feel like I should give you some background knowledge to Sun Creek first. According to local legend, Sun Creek, Colorado appeared out of the blue around 1927, as if it had always been there. In the first few years after the town's appearance, many weird events happened that made it fairly well known in the towns closest to it. People were afraid to visit, fearing the tales of mass murderers and frogs raining from the sky were far more real than just stories. Not much media was around at the time, so word about Sun Creek spread a lot slower. But in time, it became less of an urban legend and more of a fact. One of the stranger aspects of the town is the mayor of Sun Creek. Nobody knows his real name, and it's said that he's been the mayor of the town for almost 100 years, but he never seems to age. He only comes out of his manor on very rare and special occasions, such as the election, which nobody has ever run against him, and occasional holidays. The strange part about him is the fact that, while you're only able to look at him, you can't really see him. You can tell vaguely what he looks like, but you can't ever focus on him directly.
You alright there?
Now, I haven't seen or met the mayor personally, but I've heard a lot about him from my neighbor, Jack Eden. Jack is the very definition of a conspiracy net. He will randomly go on ranting about how demons are controlling everyone's minds, or he'll claim to have found a list of rules that have been followed down to the dot. But when questioned about, he miraculously can't find them anywhere. He might be a little weird, and possibly crazy, but he's a fun person to be around, so I ignored it at first. Now, after I started working in the graveyard, I believe every word he says. In my time that I worked the day shift, it was about as ordinary as you could expect for a graveyard. A person would die, I'd dig a hole, and the service would happen an hour or two later. I got paid fairly well doing this, and I had enough to keep a steady, happy life in Sun Creek. Every once in a while, weird things would happen, but they were usually passed off by me as a sense of deja vu, such as a hole being dug up despite having buried someone there the day before, or a strange row of graves that all had the same name despite having different death dates. Real problems started for me once I began working the night shift. Some things I was not taught by my superiors, so to my surprise, I was handed a gun on my first night working the night shift with a single set of instructions. Use it only when necessary. We You don't want to cause too much noise.
Damn.
From there, my supervisor led me to the mausoleum, which had an array of bats, clubs, blades, and spears inside. When the others get here, I'll instruct you on what to do. Until then, I suggest not eating anything you don't want to have come back up. Not long after we left, 3 more people came into the mausoleum right before midnight. Is this the new guy? One of them said, receiving a nod from the others. The one who I recognized as Samuel, a person who had been promoted the year before I had, spoke up. At precisely midnight tonight, you're going to witness something you cannot discuss with anybody else. He gestured to the assortment of weapons. Arm yourself with one of these, and be prepared for what you see at midnight. Roughly 3 minutes later, I heard a low buzzing sound. The 2 others, who had been introduced themselves as Ron and Alice, gripped their weapons tightly. When they start coming, they should be relatively easy to kill. Just make sure none of them get to the front gate. I was instructed by Ron. The dead rise here every night, and every night we kill them again without fail. The 3 of them grinned with a dumbfounded confusion as a cracking noise was heard from deep inside the tunnels of the mausoleum. Here they come, Samuel said, giving me a thumbs up. Just don't freak out. That night was possibly the worst night of my life. The creatures resembling neighbors I had once known and people I had never met kept coming until the buzzing noise stopped at around 5:30 in the morning. Despite how disturbing my first night was, the pay was good. It wasn't terrible work. So for the past 6 years, I've been working night after night, handling these creatures along with an ever-changing crew. Not many people stick around very long. And of the 3 people that were there when I joined, only Ron has stuck around. I guess the reason why I'm writing all this down is that I'm scared. For the past 6 years, it's been the same thing every night, without fail. For the past few weeks, however, things have changed. The creatures are acting smarter and more aggressive. I've seen creatures with slight mutations that make them harder to kill. I even saw a creature that appeared to be made up of several dozen children. That creature I hacked to bits until it was nothing more than a bloody pulp. Something has happened, though, and I don't know what it is yet. But for the safety of the town and everybody inside it, I'm going to find out what it is, or die trying. My shift's starting soon. I'll update you when I can. File 2TR1H9. File number 3196.52R. File name T2R1H9. File date creation June 15th, 2018. File creator Dr. X Fitzgerald. File description detailed summary of the 2TR1H9 virus. Date June 15th, 2018. On Monday, June 4th, 2018, symptoms of the virus began to appear in several regions of the American Southwest, Central America, and Southeast Asia. Physical descriptions of the illness were reminiscent of certain animal bites, but none could be matched to a specific animal. The origin of the virus is unknown. I will continue to post my findings as they come, including updates about new symptoms. Good night for now. Dr. Xander J. Fitzgerald.
2?
Known symptoms. June 15th, 2018.
Ass cuts.
High fever, 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius. Dry mouth, pain,
There's a hospital.
wheezing, sweaty
Nice.
palms, body aches, muscle soreness,
Business.
nausea, loss of appetite, inflammation of the joints, necrosis of the tissue at source. Date, June 23rd, 2018. The CDC has officially released a press statement as of 8:13 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning on Saturday, June 23rd, 2018, to discuss the status of the disease. They have verified that the new strain, now formally referred to as T2R2H9 virus, is legitimate.
Fuck.
They're working on finding a cure
Get back
and
on.
methods on how to contain it. The Department of Defense has yet to confirm the allegations of initiating martial law to quarantine major cities, in which the virus has been documenting more reports of the virus. Known symptoms, June 23rd, 2018. No changes. Date, June 26, 2018. A new break has come in search of a cure for the virus. An independent medical group stationed in Chicago, Illinois, has reported that they've attempted to see if they can slow
Alright,
the rate
guys.
at which the
I'm gonna
virus
stop right
spreads and
here
terminate
for
it.
the halfway point. This is episode 2.1. Like, comment, and subscribe. please help so greatly, and right now I need it. But we will pick up right where I'm leaving off, right here.